Hey, this is news from heaven. You will be much smarter in the afterlife. Hopefully I will be, because there's only one way to go, it feels like. So what we want to talk about today, thanks so much for joining, is the progression of intelligence in the spirit. Do we get smarter to eternity? And how does intelligence progress? And is it a single thing or is it a jump? But what makes you smart? Because here, you can be smart because you are born genetically like that, or you put a bunch of effort into practice. But in the spirit, you get smart because you have a good heart. And that is not just because it sounds great on some sort of Hallmark card, but this is because of the way that the mind is built. Okay, and that's really what this show is about, is how can we figure out how the mind is built and how we can have it actually do a better job of providing us a space in which to live. And what this is really about is the opening up to what's already there. That it's really, we're trying to get our receptors in order, because we can easily get non-intelligence coming into us or intelligence coming into us. And so what do? And it's going to have to do with, spoiler alert, there's going to be levels in there. It's going to be awesome. This is from Divine Love and Wisdom, number 236 to 239. It's a free download. Go to Swedenborg.com. Download that. Follow along. And we say these three levels, we'll start right talking about something. These three vertical levels exist in each of us from birth and can be opened in sequence. As they are opened, we are in the Lord, and the Lord is in us. So you may have, look at the roller coaster that we're on, because initially you're saying, well, what are you talking about, these three? You're jumping into somewhere where we're referencing something where we don't even know the beginning of the discussion, which, by the way, you can download and read for free. But by the time we're to the end of this title, as they are opened, we are in the Lord, and the Lord is in us. How could you not want to know how to be in God? Wouldn't it be nice, as we're sitting here and dealing with just all the stuff that comes up that's just, I'm dealing with this again, I'm frustrated again. Whatever that stuff is, I don't know what to do again. Wouldn't it be better to be in God? Just think about the idea of divine love and wisdom, the Lord, filling your life navigating apparatus. Okay, I want to know about levels. The existence of three vertical levels in us. And this actually is helpful if you're in AP spiritual levels. This is because vertical levels themselves have not been identified. As long as these levels have been unrecognized, the only levels people could know about are the gradual ones. When these are the only levels people know about, they can believe that our love and wisdom increase only gradually. Meaning, the levels thing, Swedenborg talks about levels at some point being like the most important thing to know. So let's just give them a little start here. You could think, look, I'm a little smarter than I used to be. I know more things, and now I'm learning a bit more, and now I went and took a course, and now I know more, and I'm up and up and up, and that's my trajectory. And what Swedenborg is asserting is, look, there's an angelic, somewhere up here, there is angelic wisdom, that there is suddenly the way you think about things, the way you perceive things, the way that you understand life is perfect. Not perfect, but compared to us, it's perfect. It is just everything clicks, everything makes sense. You have the right spiritual, emotional balance. You have the right motives, all this stuff. So you might think, okay, you just develop and get there. But he's saying that there are these vertical levels, meaning it's really more like steps on a terrace, that even though you can be progressing in this, there's a whole jump up to this. And that actually angelic wisdom is, you can't just climb by increments to get there. There are these major levels you have to cross over. But luckily, the building blocks for how we get there are very much in what we're doing here as we're progressing, but maybe not in the way you think. It doesn't matter how many books you read or how many videos about Swedenborg stuff you watch. The actual driver for that progression, it's going to blow your mind. Well, you probably already guessed it by now. As long as, when these are the only levels people know about, they can believe that our love and wisdom increase only gradually. Okay, so already we've got not just wisdom, but love as well. So, and don't you want your love to increase at the same time? So both of those, it's not just that you get incrementally better. And it can seem, or incrementally worse. It can seem like if you're trying to improve your love and wisdom, that is just like a laborious, long fruitless journey where you're saying, okay, maybe I'm a little better, but now I'm back to where I was before. I don't know if I really care about better things or react better to the situations in life. I don't really know if I'm thinking more clearly. The good news is there are times, sure, where we're working, but you can have this whole big, suddenly you just got a pay raise and you're in a whole new income bracket, and you can do all these things you were struggling with before, mentally and emotionally, suddenly you can handle. It needs to be realized, though, that we all have these three vertical or distinct levels in us from our birth, one above or within the other. You can think of it vertically, you can think of it as deep in your heart. And that each vertical or distinct level has horizontal or gradual levels by which it increases incrementally. This is because there are both kinds of level in everything, not just you. There's not just a metaphor we're making that can only describe something airy and psychological. Everything has these levels in it. No matter how large or small, as explained above, 222 to 229, neither kind of level can exist apart from the others. As noted in 232 above, these three vertical levels are called earthly, spiritual, and heavenly, which you'll find that terminology all over the place. When we are born, in Swedenborg, nowhere else, we come first into the earthly level. Okay, here we go. Now let's go from this nebulous, right? There's these levels and you can increase within these levels. What are you even talking about? Let's see if we can pin this to something that we directly experience in our lives here. When we're born, we come into the earthly, that's a little too close, into the earthly level, which gradually develops within us. In keeping with the things we learn, okay, here we go. Keeping with the things we learn and the intelligence we gain through this learning. There's my daughter. All the way, she's doing her own learning, all the way to the summit of intelligence called rationality. Okay, so now, if you wouldn't mind, we'll just draw one more picture. We won't get too fancy with the colors, but if you're saying we have this outermost first level, we through learning, right? We can be going up and up this thing, and then this upper limit here is called rationality. It's worth it. Rationality. How is that? A little meditation. It's kind of like a little meditation, waiting for him to finish the word. He's still working on that word. But is this really a finished word? That looks like nothing. It looks like scribbles. Okay. So that makes sense. And the peak of the outermost level in us is now we're rational. Now we can get things. And we can get it. Okay? This by itself, though, does not open the second level, the one called spiritual. This level is opened by a love for being useful that comes from our intelligence. But the love for being useful is a spiritual one, a love for our neighbor. Look at how thick the plot got all of a sudden. Because here you have, this is all cognitive, right? You're learning and you want to get to rationality. There's another level here. We will get fancy with the colors. There's another level here, right? Which is this spiritual level that we want to get up into. But there's this hard line here. You can never pass this. It doesn't matter how you're really rational, then you get more rational and you get more rational. You can even have it be a fault, right? Don't you sometimes, you're just so rational and calm about everything. You're just mechanistic about it. You will never get over this without the help of our good friend, love. That there's this other side that's progressing in us. And so it has to be that some kind of love for the neighbor has to push us up and into the beginning of this level. Because this pursuit, this is not just the pursuit of intelligence. This is going up to God, right? Which God is the love of everyone in the universe. You can't just get there with perfecting mental ability. The love is the only thing that will steer you into that. It's the only why. It's the thesis or the mission statement that will push you into this next level because of the nature of this next level. I can't believe you're still watching. Thank you. So, yeah, okay. Useful. The love for being useful is a spiritual one. So which love is this? the love of being useful. Sorry, I'm right back here, but this is useful to learn about this usefulness, because so you're super rational, you really can understand things, but it's only through this idea that I can use my rationality to help, to accomplish positive things, because you can take your rationality that's really well honed and decide, I'm going to go after love of self and love of the world, selfishness and materialism. And you have plenty of people who are whip smart and use that to get ahead, get all kinds of ahead, money, status. How do you draw status? A box, probably. You can get all those things, but it doesn't mean you're stuck on the first level of existence. Doesn't matter how far you go in there. Doesn't matter how many things you get, how many a million monies, or you're the greatest ruler in the world. That's a little crown on the box there. Yeah, that looks good. Doesn't matter. You're on the first level. You can never get to the second level without this. I'm going to use my rationality to do something that is actually useful, meaning good to the neighbor. Okay. It's starting to fall in. This is great. In the same way, this level can develop by incremental steps all the way to its summit. And it does so by our discovering what is true and good, or by spiritual truths. So there's a whole new category of ideas here. Before, this learning is what Swedenborg would call natural truths. That there is just all the disciplines of the world, all the facts you can learn about life. Those are what this traffics in. And you can take those down here, or you can take them up to the boundary of rationality. But in here, there are spiritual truths. Okay. These are a whole different medium to work in. And without this love of being useful, you actually can't really comprehend these. You don't get them. You dismiss them as nothing. You can hear the words or the ideas around them, but you don't really get what they are and what they mean. So you just can't progress in this way if you don't have that love. Discovering what is true and good, or by spiritual truths. Even so, these do not open that third level that is called heavenly. This is opened by a heavenly love for being useful, that is a love for the Lord. And love for the Lord is nothing but applying the precepts of the word to our lives. These precepts being essentially to abstain from evil things. Okay, what are we doing here? Okay, we want to abstain from evil things because they are hellish and demonic. Sure, we'll put that in there. And to do good things because they are heavenly and divine. Okay. This is how the three levels are opened in us sequentially. So even though you're putting together spiritual truths, that can only take you to a point where this love is not just a love of being useful, but it's something that the terminology even breaks down a little bit, because you're talking about a heavenly love of being useful. Sure, wasn't that sort of this? But this is different. This is a whole different thing. This is a love for the Lord, applying the truths to your life. And when you're at this level, you can understand how a love for the Lord is actually more of a love for the rest of the human race, which, right, that's who we're thinking of when we're in this spiritual mindset, right? Because I'll just draw lines wherever I want. Because we know this idea of being useful is going out and helping these people. But when you get up here, there's a new way of understanding how the good is coming from the Lord to these people and how we participate. It starts to get mystical up there. Although he does put some pretty tangible things on it. Abstaining from evil things because they are hellish and demonic. So not even because of how they will affect our reputation, or we understand the sort of societal economics of it. There's something about these things from their essence. I won't do them, and the reason I'm doing these good things is completely free of credit or whatever else might sort of be a false pull in that direction. It's that love that pushes us up. This is how these three levels are opened in us sequentially. So that's the ladder that you climb. And are you climbing it? We don't know. Let's take a look. How far along am I? As long as we're living in this world, we have no knowledge of any opening of levels within us. So if you're waiting for a level to open and it didn't, where hasn't come yet? Hasn't come yet? Don't worry. It could have already happened. But what makes it happen? This is because our attention is focused on the earthly level, which is the most remote. To a certain extent, we so much live here. We have to pay bills. We have to navigate life. We have to learn things to do a job. We are so much here, and that's fine. There's flashes of this stuff above, but it's okay to be there. This is because our attention is focused on the earthly level, which is the most remote. We are thinking, intending, and talking and acting on that basis. And the spiritual level, which is deeper, does not communicate with the earthly level directly, but only by correspondence. Communication by correspondence is imperceptible. Okay. So you're talking with heaven, but you don't. It's sort of like the involuntary motion of the heart. That every once in a while you can, oh yeah, my heart is beating, but most of the time you don't even feel it's there. And I think too, we'll get glimpses of thinking in these other ways when we've kind of moved back from the rat race and everything that goes like with that. But yeah, it's not something we're in all the time, but it doesn't mean there's not something there and there's not something happening. And not that there isn't good progress happening there as well. However, as soon as we put off the earthly level, which happens when we die, we come into awareness of whatever level has been opened within us in the world. Of the spiritual level, if that level has been opened. Of the heavenly level, if that level has been opened. If we become conscious on the spiritual level after death, then we no longer think, intend, so what happens? And this is where we start to get into the distinct levels. That there it really is. It's not just like, wow, you really know a lot of jargon around chemistry and stuff since you started working at that lab. I barely understand what you're talking about. But this is like this is like the difference between a human and an angel. Which even though they're the same thing, it's a different mind. If we become conscious on the spiritual level after death, then we no longer think, intend, or talk, or act in an earthly way, but spiritually. There's a whole new way of being. If we become conscious on the heavenly level, then we think, intend, and talk and act on that level. Further, since communication among the three levels occurs only by correspondence, the differences in levels of love, wisdom, and useful function are so definite that there is no communication between them by direct contact. This is a lot like, well, I was going to say, like, if you think about what's going on a cellular level versus what's going on at the organ level versus what's going on at the level of the whole person or organism. Like when I think about moving, right, I don't, there's a ton going on the cellular level, but it is its own world in some ways. Like I don't know what's going on there. I just know what's going on this level. And if you were really thinking, if you were really in the cellular mode and you were just thinking about, okay, we're letting, whatever we're letting, using this ATP and we're firing now, and that's different than thinking about the arm. So that they love each other. They're super interdependent, but it's a whole different world. The worlds are vital to each other's existence, but they're different. And that's what the difference of these levels are. We can see from this that we do have three vertical levels and these can be opened in sequence. Because there are within us these three levels of love and wisdom and therefore of usefulness. Interesting that, it's a way of thinking and feeling, but also the way that you affect the world. It follows that there are three levels of volition and discernment and consequent closure. Just let me pause for a second and say this is the densest paragraph in the whole thing. So if you can make it through here, you can make it through anywhere. And therefore of concentration within us on usefulness. Since volition is the vessel of love, discernment is the vessel of wisdom, and closure the usefulness that results from them. We can see from this that there is within each of us an earthly, a spiritual, and a heavenly volition and discernment, potentially from birth, and effectively when they're opened. You have an earthly mind, a spiritual mind, a heavenly mind. If you think about what you think of as your mind or your intelligence or how you see the world, that's probably your earthly one with maybe tinges of your spiritual one. But there are three minds inside of you. And if you think about what you care about, who you think you are based on your motives, that's probably mostly your earthly self. There's a spiritual side of you and what it loves and cares about. And then there's even a heavenly one, which is like so up there that maybe we feel a little bit of it in our dreams or in our best days. In short, the human mind, consisting of volition and discernment, has three levels from creation and birth. So we have an earthly mind, a spiritual mind, and a heavenly mind. I just told you that. This guy's just like got no original material. He just copies everything I say. Consequently, we can be raised into angelic wisdom and possess it even while we are living in this world. Since we become conscious of it only after death if we become angels. And then we say inexpressible things, things incomprehensible to an earthly minded person. Impossible to read. But look at that. I was just kind of flying over it. But we can be raised into angelic wisdom and possess it even while we are living in the world. So we just were saying before, you're earthly, you're mostly earthly. Not always. And the whole Swedenborg phenomenon was him having those levels overtly open. But I'd say there's times, probably a lot of times, and hopefully more and more, where we do have angelic wisdom in little fits and starts. And you can I can just sometimes feel when it's like, wow, this is a really great way that I'm being right now. And I could not do this again if I tried. I could not. There's states I'm in where there's no way that I could call that up, but suddenly it's there with you and you're like, wow, what a better way to see this situation. It feels like you get this little tapping into this angelic wisdom. Still, we become conscious of it only after death. So I feel like you can be a little aware of it, but the actual, he always talks about heavenly things. You get this a little bit of a reward while you're here. You feel a little better, but it really comes through vividly when you're free of the body. If we become angels, then we say inexpressible things, things incomprehensible to an earthly minded person. This is where you will be much smarter in the afterlife. Here's a little story. I was acquainted with a moderately educated man in the world and saw him and talked with him in heaven after his death. Keep in mind, Swedenborg was an extremely educated person. So this moderately educated person was way less smarter than Swedenborg, like by the measures we would usually use to define that in the world. So how's he doing now? I sensed very clearly that he was talking like an angel, and that what he was saying was beyond the grasp of earthly minded people. So how did he get so smart? The reason was that in the world he had applied the precepts of the word to his life and had worshipped the Lord. So the Lord had raised him into the third level of love and wisdom. It wasn't at all about study. It doesn't matter how educated he was, because you can get up there, you can start to climb that chart. You can start to climb this. Oh, where is it? Way up here? Yeah. Oh, there it is. That's what I'm talking about. You can start to get your rationality way up here, but this red love is what really is driving it. And so this guy, even though he got to, around here or something, he wasn't doing a ton of studying, wasn't his life. But what was his life? His life was applying the precepts of the word, which is are summed up in love the Lord and love your neighbor, right? And you can go into all those precepts. But he did that, and he had an eye on the divine and saying, lead me and teach me. And suddenly when he's pulled up and when he's out of the body, he's talking like an angel. He's getting up there and saying these things that you couldn't even understand, because it's really the love that drives the wisdom. And that's the news from heaven. How'd you like it? I know that this was a lot of levels and theory and stuff like that, but I do think that it's awesome. And especially the idea of rationality to this spiritual love of usefulness to a heavenly love. That rationality is this point, it's like a sort of a fork in the road. Okay, I understand things, but what am I going to use that mind for? I hope that you get a chance to use your mind for all kinds of spiritual and heavenly love. I hope those levels are opening in you and you feel it in little bits. And I hope that you can go forward feeling confident that, okay, even though my life just seems like, is this a mess? What's going on? Or am I progressing anywhere? That there is a project, there is progress, and that it's going to pay off in the spirit, which is really our real life. But not to say it won't pay off here. I think there's going to be times, there's hopefully today, where you're feeling a little, here's my spiritual level. And that's a cool way to think about it. I'm got the spiritual mind is kicking in just a little bit here. And then when the earthly mind is making all kinds of noise and fuss and convincing you that your life is a mess, just remember, maybe the earthly mind is, but there's these other levels where things are really happening. Thanks for hanging out. Really appreciate it.